Welcome to the first of the 10 and 20-minute NFL podcast series going live on the fly. This is really cutting it close. Just got back from a nice session of tennis. No time to waste. So let's get right into it. Team number one, the Buffalo Bills. I'm going to call this the State of the Union. Let's go with the 10-minute Buffalo Bills State of the Union. We start off again. If you didn't see the introductory video, these are what we're going over. The recap of the draft hits and misses, needs left unfilled, divisional outlook, season win and divisional win information, and a slide on final thoughts. Some of the things I've culled together that might be interesting, might be things that you could look for as you go through. So here we go, 10 minutes with the Buffalo Bills. First of all, before we even got to the draft, we know last year that at one point Buffalo was 6-6, and they were struggling to make a playoff berth. They had the late run coupled with some injuries and Miami disappearing. They got the divisional crown, which afforded them a home game. Eventually, they got beaten in another close game against rival Kansas City. In the offseason, they've revamped their wide receiver core. Basically, they lost three of their top four pass catchers, one through trade. We know that with Diggs, wide receiver Diggs. They added Curtis Samuel, who's pretty good. I think his usage is going to spike up from where he was with Washington. They also subtracted a bunch of defensive backs, and they have a few guys on defense that are coming back off injury. So that's something to watch. They may not be at full strength defensively. So we enter the draft. We knew what their schedule was, but we didn't know exactly who was going to be played when and where. We knew that their uncommon opponents are going to be pretty tough: Kansas City, Baltimore, and the Lions. So that was not going to be an easy schedule for them. Here we go with their top draft needs, according to me. Defensive back. I thought they needed two defensive backs. Cornerback was an area. They lost White in the offseason. They had some injuries. Jordan Poyer is gone. The offensive line needed one more person, and they were a little light in terms of stopping the run. I thought they could have used somebody up the middle to stop the run. In terms of what they drafted, first of all, they traded back twice. I didn't think this team needed to be passive in the draft. It's not like they needed a lot of people. I would have preferred that they actually would have traded up to get one of the top receivers. Although Keenan Coleman is highly rated on my board, he is rated 7th in terms of my wide receivers. He had a 40 to 50 draft range. He was drafted at pick 33. So all in all, not too bad. One of the DB picks right there, Cole Bishop, that satisfies the need for me. Dwayne Carter, not the perfect run stopper, but at least the first three picks were kind of in the areas that I wanted them to see go after. Ray Davis, interesting that he was drafted to this particular team. He had one incredible game at Kentucky where he threatened 300 yards. I think he threatened 200 by halftime. Ray Davis is a power running back, runs between the tackles. I think he's going to be an interesting complement and asset to their run game. So they basically done a nice job up front. They finally went after the center at pick 141. He's going to need some grooming, but he's not bad. Washington linebacker, there were some injuries. There were a lot of good players on Washington, but I think it's a nice complimentary pick. Javon Solomon is one to watch. I didn't have edge rusher as one of their needs, but I think he has the kind of skill set that he's going to be contributing some sacks down the road. He comes from Troy, I believe, so he's not going to be somebody that's going to be ready right away, but I like that addition as well. They waited too long to get a cornerback. Pick 219 is too long to get a cornerback. My rating on him was not draft worthy. I gave him an NR rating. For those unfamiliar with my ratings, that means I didn't think he should have been one of the top 230 people selected in this particular draft. Same with the guy from across the pond. I did not evaluate him as one of the 400. But obviously he's going to be stashed and hopefully developed as we go through and as they go through and see what he's made of. So at this particular point, we've got their roster. Now, what didn't they do at this particular point? If we go back to that slide one more time, let me see here. If we go back, DB, they did select a couple of DBs, but I thought they should have selected a cornerback earlier than this. Offensive line, I think they hit, but they didn't hit with, and they took 3 offensive linemen, but they didn't get that one offensive lineman that you know is going to be plug and play and get into the starting lineup right away. None of these guys I project as plug and play. So in a way, for 2024, they still have a cornerback need and they still have one offensive lineman need. And run stopper, not really sure that Dwayne Carter is the answer there. So while I think they added some nice pieces, it's an overall above average draft. I don't feel like it was a draft that hit all their needs head on right away. Divisional outlook, season win outlook, and the final thoughts. We're going to go look at those right now. Divisional outlook, they're plus 160 to win the division. Remember, we've got the Jets, whose season ended prematurely last year with Aaron Rodgers' first game injury. And we've got and they did a lot of things with their roster. And then we've got the Dolphins. And the Dolphins, while they didn't beat playoff teams last year, and I'll be talking about them very shortly after this preview is over, the Dolphins, off their best performances, they're lethal on offense. They're extremely fast, and they're going to present some challenges. They had a lot of sacks last year. They also had a lot of late season injuries. But Miami and the Jets are definitely going to be formidable opponents. I talked about Kansas City, Baltimore, and the Lions, teams that Buffalo plays that these other teams in the division will not play. So because of that, Buffalo has to be a little bit better than Miami and the Jets in order to eke them out in the division standings. I end up having no opinion on their divisional odds. For season wins, we're talking 10.5 is the prevailing number across the board. Just about everybody has 10.5. I am leaning toward the under on that. As people know, I tend to play more unders than overs, generally on a 3 or even 4 or 5 to 1 ratio. Last year was really skewed in that direction. I think it was 12 unders and 1 over for season wins. The year before was somewhere around 10 unders and 3 overs. So I would lean under with the Buffalo Bills. I believe their schedule is pretty difficult. They've got 3 road games in the middle of the schedule. And as we said, all these uncommon opponents. Lean at 10.5. Definitely, if you see an 11 out there or a favorable alternate line, alternate lines aren't going to be up right away. They're going to be up in a month or two. When they come out, if you get a favorable line on under 11, minus 160, minus 170, even minus 180, it would be an area that I would look at. Final thoughts. This is a slide where you could kind of take away, kind of bookmark this. These are the areas that I'm looking at in terms of what's next for the Buffalo Bills. First of all, number one, top draft needs did address. They were addressed, but not fully. I still think there's going to be growing pains in each of the areas of need. They just lost too many people in the secondary that I don't think they're going to hit the ground running as far as pass defense. They're uncommon opponents. We talked about that, tougher than their rivals. The final 3 games of the season, if you look at the Jets schedule, if you look at the rest of the divisional schedule, if they can get to these games, rebuilding New England, they're going to play New England twice in the last 3 weeks, and they're going to have that tough game at New York with the Jets. But if this looks like a 2-1 down the stretch, so if they're tied or slightly ahead going into the end of the season, this is favorable for Buffalo. They've just got to manage. Remember, again, they weren't firing on all cylinders until the end of the season. Can they just pick up where they left off, or are they a team that is a little bit flawed? And that goes into the last key there. Quarterback turnovers. We know that occasionally Josh Allen tries to do too much. And the secondary play, how does that play out? if Josh Allen can play within himself, if the new wide receiver core can quickly mesh with him, you've got Dalton Kincaid, the tight end, in his second year of operation. You've got a tandem running back combination. The Bills should be favored to win the division, but the margin for error is pretty slim. We're going to look at that turnover ratio with Josh Allen, and we're going to look at how the secondary comes together, especially in September. I think there'll be growing pains. That's it for Buffalo's 10-minute recap. I think we did pretty well on the time. Next up is going to be 10 minutes with the Miami Dolphins. Again, all my videos can be seen on YouTube. You can bookmark, you can subscribe, you can like. If I didn't cover anything, or if you have a question or comment about Buffalo, please put it in the YouTube and I will be sure to go ahead and comment on it. I will respond. Again, these shows are going to appear random. You're going to have several shows this week, beginning with Miami in just a few minutes. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back with the Miami Dolphins State of the Union 10-minute recap.